good evening. Well, it's the story of the day continues to be just enormous turnout. The most recent numbers that we just finished collecting, while inexact, it looks like it's at this point just under 70% turnout. This is before 6 o'clock. It's the highest number I can ever remember, but maybe there were others. Someone, I think it was Paul, just told me it was in 1992 we had a higher turnout, 85% or something.
83.9.
Yeah, there you go. So, that is the story of the day. The lines are building again. So, because as people get off work or on their way home, they are stopping to vote. And so it's continuing, and it will be a high turnout. We've had very few problems during the day. We had a couple of places where ballots were mixed up, but we're busy taking care of that. And right now, people are still counting, so the absentee ballot figure could go higher. We're counting as of last night, there were about 636,000 registered on the online system, but many more probably came in today. So at the end of the day, it looks like people chose both. They both came in person and they came with absentee ballots. And when you add it all up, people are very interested in voting this year. So I don't know what else to remind people of except, yes, you can still, as of this hour, still put your absentee ballot in the ballot boxes right up till 8 o'clock. None of the ones that came in today will be counted until after 8 o'clock so that we can cross-check the lists. And other than that, yes, you can still register and vote using Election Day registration right up until 8 o'clock. And my message to voters is stay in line. If you're in line, stay there because you will be allowed to vote if you're in line by 8 o'clock. I'm hoping those lines don't build too much because I hate to see that. At least it's a little warmer tonight than it was this morning. But it still is certainly a great day for Connecticut's election.
Can you talk about, are there any problems at Grace Lutheran Church in Hartford? Was there enough staff? I mean, the lines there seem to be like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and I don't know if we're seeing lines at any other locations like that.
There were reports of some other places that had maybe 2-hour lines, and I heard that was true in Asylum Hill as well. But I don't know. You know, Grace Lutheran Church, it's right near my neighborhood, and I know parking is an issue. It's difficult, and I did see long lines there. But, you know, of course, it looks longer because people are standing 6 feet apart. But if you're waiting in line 2 hours, that is a long line.
Do you think that Hartford prepared enough, or that Hartford had enough staff or enough help or volunteers?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I hesitate to say that because the preparation downtown was amazing for the Election Day registration booths, and I was there yesterday, and they had, lines of people still going in to get absentee ballots. So this was a hard one to call for election officials. We had to prepare for both everybody coming in person and everybody voting absentee ballot. And it would appear that many more people decided to come in at the last minute in person. So it's hard to say. I don't know how many tables they had set up there, and like I say, it was a hard one to call.
Were there any tabulators, snafus, or anything like that? Just across the state, is there? I always hear about them breaking down.
Yeah, I heard about one here and there, but nothing like what happened in 2018 with the wet ballots that kept jamming the machines. I did hear about that somewhere where somebody was giving out too much hand sanitizer or something, and it was getting on the ballots and jamming the machine. But these are all kind of anecdotes, urban myth probably. But we did hear about some of that. But I think remarkably little considering the voter turnout today. Amazing.
What about Election Day registration? I realize clerks and other folks are probably real busy just getting through the election, but have you heard any numbers on Election Day registration?
Not really. I have heard there are some people doing it, using Election Day registration, and they were certainly prepared for it in the cities. I know that because we worked with them, a couple years ago. New Haven had a big problem. But I think the fact that students are not so much in school now, and a lot of them seem to have voted in their hometowns, that may have changed the dynamic. We really haven't heard about a big number of Election Day registrations.
Have you any update on the situation in London, and have there been other examples of the incorrect ballot being distributed
That's the only one that seems large enough to even notice. I heard kind of a rumor about Killingly, but that we're still looking at that. I'm not sure that actually was true.
With the crush of the absentee ballots, what do you think that will do to, how long do you think it will take to get final results?
You know, final results in absolutely every race. I mean, of course, you know that we don't certify an election, which are really the final results for weeks. But as far as initial unofficial results will be on our website, you know, on a rolling basis. I suspect most of our towns will be done by midnight. And then, you know, the cities and the larger suburb towns will probably take a longer time, especially those like West Hartford that have an enormous number of absentee ballots. I think they had something like 18,000. That's a big number.
Would you say by tomorrow night maybe?
I'm hopeful that by tomorrow night we'll know most of them. The only real question will be those kind of close races where it makes a big difference, and there will be some of those.
So you don't think that any of the towns will count the absentee ballots that went into the absentee ballot box today?
Well, they can't count them until after 8 o'clock.
Right, they can't
Right.
count them until after 8 o'clock.
Right. Some of them were saying that if they had so much to do tonight, they were going to wait until the morning to do that count, and that is okay. But I would hope that if they're not completely swamped, that they would count those starting at 8 o'clock as well.
Have you heard anything about rejection rates of absentee ballots?
I have heard that it's probably pretty much on track as always, but you know, we won't know really until we start counting them all. But you know, we never really keep track of those things. There is no curing of absentee ballots in Connecticut. No statute supports that. So what we have to do is just report the number to the federal government. And we've always been very low on that number, under 1%, sometimes under half of 1%. So we'll see.
It may take a while before it comes to fruition in terms of being able to vote early. I think they were mail-in voting or those who do absentee voting. But you know, based on what you're seeing in this election today, do you think the opposition to that is going to be able to be overcome in the next legislative session?
I would hope so. At least certainly the part about early voting. I mean, you can see tonight, I was just watching the news in Georgia and some of these other places that have early voting, and there are no lines at the polls. Why? Because they all voted early. So, I mean, although you saw long lines for early voting in some places, you know, that shows you how hard it is to calculate when people are going to vote. Still, it would take enormous pressure off Election Day. And of course, I think now the genie's out of the bottle on absentee voting. People really want these options. So I would think there'd be less opposition.
And as you pointed out several times, that people seem to like to vote in person here in Connecticut. Do you think
Yes.
early voting would have them be even more appeal?
Yeah, that's right. That's the way they do it in places like Massachusetts. It's basically early in-person absentee balloting, if you will. You come in person, but you come on, let's say, 3 or 4 other days, and you file what's effectively an absentee ballot, much like people are doing right now. So I'm all for it. I think we need to let our citizens have the same options that many other states do. I think we're now in a very small number of states that don't have either of those options. So I think we're ready for it. I hope so.
And could early voting be done without a constitutional amendment? Or
No, but we did pass it last session. We just need to pass it through another legislature, and then it goes on the ballot. Yeah, so whatever we do is going to take some time now, unless we can get a 75% vote in the General Assembly, both houses. And I'm hopeful that can happen now. That would be especially true of no-fault absentee balloting, so-called. We would definitely have to take that language out of the state constitution. But we would just put it in statute instead, which is what we've been recommending for about 10 years, because it leaves us no flexibility when it comes to something like this pandemic. That's the problem.
So do you think the chance of early voting is probably easier than, or no excuse, now that we know what no excuse absentee ballots look like,
Right.
is that an easier lift?
Well, early voting is one step closer. It was already passed last session, not with enough votes that it doesn't have to go back to the legislature again and then on the ballot. But anything would have to go on the ballot. And everybody in the state is going to get to vote on whether they want these options or not. And And that's the beauty of it. I mean, I can't imagine why anybody would oppose letting people decide, and that's what we should do.
One more question on turnout. You
Yes.
said as of now, it was just under 70%.
Yes.
What's the forecast? Or are you able to-
Well, people are always asking me that, and I mean, I have to say, I'm pretty confident we'll probably be certainly over 75%, which is the usual number for a presidential. I'm thinking it goes to maybe 80%, maybe even more. And that's what people are reporting in other states as well. My colleague in Colorado just reported that, I think it was 2 hours ago, 80% of the voters had voted in Colorado. Now, of course, they have mail-in voting as well as in person on Election Day, but still, you know, that's 2 o'clock in Colorado, and that's a big number.
And what's our percentage of voters who've already cast votes now? Or are we at?
How many have cast votes? Oh, you mean absentee ballots?
No, just
Oh, in general, just that's the number. That's the percentage. I don't know what the actual number is. Do we know? I don't know. It's a pretty vague number because we call all the towns and ask them how many of you have voted by now, and some towns we can't even reach. So it's an extrapolation at best. Yeah, sure. All right. Well, Election Day is going great, and anybody who still hasn't voted, there's still time. 8 o'clock, cutoff date. And if you're in line, stay in line. You will get to vote. If you're in line by 8 o'clock, you get to vote. All right, thanks, everyone.
When's your next availability? Or are you done tonight?
I don't think we won't do another one tonight.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Okay.